Hey everybody, welcome to another edition of the Appalachian Trail Talk series. This is leg number 22, which heads now north out of Harpers Ferry. So those who are interested in flip-flopping, this is a good series to pay attention to. And that's what I call them for my videos. If you were following along, I actually put Big Bird in the title of those, so they're like, you know, Big Bird's Appalachian Trail Flip-Flop, day number 1, day number 2. So that to actually distinguish them as a potential flip-flop scenario here. So, all right. And so this starts on day 13, which is the 13th of April, 2017. And I took a 0 in Harpers Ferry because I had picked up what I thought was some chiggers. I laid my chope hats down back at that last campground I was at, which was the Blackburn Center. But really, if it had been chiggers, by the time they start itching, it's been like 3 days. But that's the only time I think maybe I could have perhaps gotten the chiggers. So I took a 0 because I needed to get somebody to take me into a store there. Even though I've done a resupply, I needed to get some clear fingernail polish, because that's what you use for chiggers. That's what we was using when I grew up. So that's what I did. When in fact, I guess in retrospect, I should have just gotten something for the itching. But I wanted to get some fingernail polish because that's what I thought was going to probably work the best to kill them. And it took all day that day to finally get somebody freed up at the hotel that could take me about the 8 miles to the Walmart. Which is why he also recommends you send a resupply box, because it's really hard to get into anywhere to get a resupply in Harpers Ferry. Okay, so after that 0, I met a man in the lobby who was a subscriber of mine, a viewer, and he was getting ready to start his flip-flop there at Harpers Ferry that day that I was taken as my 0. So I wished him well and hoped to see me on the trail. His name was Rob, and he had just recently had a kidney transplant where his kidneys were both bad, and he was not going to make it anymore, and his niece gave him one of hers. So she saved his life, and he was out going to hike. So all right, and I will meet him later as we head up. Now, one of the things that's really important to note here, and I'm going to show you some pictures of Harpers Ferry, but we're going to take this this high road, this high street rather, and it's really pretty views. As you can see here from the profile, it's pretty flat. Okay, so you have a pretty flat hike through town. You're going to go down, and you're going to cross over the Potomac and the Shenandoah rivers. I guess you're actually technically coming over the Potomac, but it feeds right there into the Shenandoah. It's really, really pretty. And you'll cross over a bridge, and then you're going to get on this C&O Canal towpath, one of those old where they used to have the canals, and they would have the horses, and they would pull the barges down a canal. Anyway, so you're going to be hiking along here. There is camping along this area. I think Early Riser camped here this last year, according to one of the viewers that I met along that path as I was hiking that. And that's about a nice 5-mile, nice flat walk. You think that would be great, right? But man, I'll tell you, that hard-packed surface was really starting to hurt my feet. I'd definitely rather be out on the trail than walking on that much road. Then you cross over and you begin your climb up. But let me first here show you about 3 pictures I think I've got of what it kind of looks like to come through and kind of break into some of the old town there. Okay, now when you leave, you're really going to need to be very, very hydrated as you leave. So if you like to drink a lot of alcohol that night, you might not want to drink quite so much of it, and you might want to, just really, really tank up in the morning, and you're going to have to carry a lot of water, because you see there is no water. You do have some here at the Ed Garvey shelter, but if you want to go down a steep 0.4 trail and come back up another 0.4, then you can go ahead and go there to get water. And I guess if you're going to camp there, that's fine, but that's really not that far for that day, unless you've come in and just done a stop and go where you've gone into the center, grabbed your box, got your photograph taken, and then you take back out again. You know, there is water out of the Potomac, but man, you have to really be desperate to be drinking out of you know, any kind of rivers. Are going to have a lot of heavy metal contamination in them. So anyway, so I would, unless you want to go down, I would count this out. Then you've got you know, a relatively nicer walk. You're going to come up to this War Correspondence Memorial. There's a spigot there, and that's where you should probably get your water, even if you're going to go into the campsite here, because you notice you have a very seasonal stream there. Okay, now there was water that was there. I went ahead and rehydrated, took a nice break there, and took some pictures. And let me show you what the War Memorial looks like. Okay, this Crampton Gap Shelter actually was a nice area. I didn't really pay much attention to the shelter myself, because since I was camping, there's a lot of campsites down here. And there is an intermittent spring. Like I said, it did have some water on it, but they tell you, hey, consider, if you're northbound, getting your water here before you come in. Okay, and I've got a picture here that I took of myself, my selfie in the morning that I usually take, but you can see kind of in the background how wide open it is. Plenty of tenting, plenty of hammocking. Okay, that night at the shelter, I did notice a mom and a daughter that came in. They were kind of on the other side of the camping area. Didn't pay much attention to them, but I got to run into them the next day and then spend the next two nights camping with them, and got to know them, and had a pretty neat experience with them. And you get to meet them here in just a little bit. This next day coming out was just a really nice day of hiking. I remember it was just beautiful that day. You know, there's you know, just it was coming up here on the Easter weekend, so there were a lot of hikers that were out, a lot of section hikers, a lot of backpackers going back and forth. So this is a pretty nice area here that this campground. I stopped in here for lunch, but they actually have a shower here. You know, if you don't have a pair of flip-flops or some sort of shower shoes, I'd wear a pair of socks in there, because it looked like a perfect area to go in and get, you know, those plantar's warts, or, you know, a really bad case of athlete's foot. It was. I mean, it's just a spot out in the woods that's you know, it's got some picnic tables and some bathrooms, but I don't think it was cleaned very often, to be honest with you. Okay, and it is close to the road, so, but it wouldn't be a bad place to go if you needed to stop in there. Then as you continue out of there, this Dahlgren, there's a Dahlgren Chapel here, and that was at the beginning of my video. But let me throw a photograph of it in here. You'll pass this Dahlgren Chapel. Okay, I also throw a view in from up here at the same time, and you can see that you're not really high elevation. I mean, we're pretty down here, pretty low, 3,000, 2,000, 1,000, you know, 1,000 feet. We're not that high, so you know, the views that you get are not going to be quite as breathtaking as you are in other areas on the trail. So let's see. You're going to come upon the Washington Monument. Now, this is not the Washington Monument down in the Capitol. This is a monument built to Washington by the locals in that county, and it had fallen into disrepair like 2 different times before it was finally rebuilt by the Conservation Corps. And there you can get some water there. If I remember right, it didn't look real healthy coming out of the spigot, so I think I passed on it. Which is one of the things you're going to start running into with water here in the areas, is some of it looks pretty awful, and it kind of makes you wonder about its purity. Anyway, let me show you what the memorial looks like. Okay, so we ended up stopping that night at this pine knob shelter. Okay, it's not too far off the trail. There is some water that's right there next to the shelter. A lot of people would probably go up to Annapolis Rocks and look at and see the sunset. We didn't go up because of the weekend. There were so many people out there. It was late enough in the day, and the campsites were filling up. So as we came by the shelter, I remember going in and having to kind of scrape around to find a spot, and that's when Deb and Liz kind of motioned over and said, "Hey, you can come over here by us." And I went over there and kind of shared a part of their clear out area for my tent. So that next day, as we left, we didn't really go over there since it was probably more of a nice western sunset view. I don't remember what this Pogo looked like. I think I remember we may have stopped into this Ensign Corral shelter for lunch, perhaps, if I remember right. And then for the evening, the trails along there were really kind of neat. And I'll show you a picture of some of that here in just a second. Then you start this descent down, and then you kind of start a little climb back up here to Raven Rocks. And this is where we stayed the night. Now this is very important, okay? So you're going to go 0.1 off the trail and another 0.3 down a steep side trail to get water, or you can get water here at the creek. And it's highly recommended that you just carry your water in, okay? Deb and Liz were ahead of me. They didn't know that, and so when they got there, they had to go down and get their water and come back up. So that's one of the advantages of having a hiking guide, if you will, for little things like that, okay? And so just a kind of a good foot stomper there to go ahead and get your water. And now Maryland fooled me. I thought it was going to be a lot of nice, easy trails because the Conservancy's poster for Maryland is this nice, beautiful path through this field of green, waving grass, But and I did find that spot, and it did last a couple of 100 yards, but that was not what most of the trail was. While most of the trail was nice, there were some startup of some rocks, and some of the people were joking when asked, where does the rocks in Pennsylvania start? And some would say they start in Maryland. And there was a couple of sections there where that was kind of true. And matter of fact, there was one section that I remember was almost 2 hours of rocks, which had been the most rocks up to that point in my Appalachian Trail experience. And I was thinking, what is this? This is Maryland. This is not where it's supposed to be. Anyway, let me show you a picture of what the nice path looks like, as well as the beginning of a rocky path. And here then at Raven Rocks for that night, I was once again camped in the vicinity of Deb and Liz, and one thing I noticed about Liz is she stretched a lot. At that Dahlgren Backpackers Campground at lunch the day before, she was just stretching and stretching like crazy, and then she was doing that a lot at each of the campsites we got to. And that night we had this spectacular red, just one of those sunsets that you only see maybe 3 or 4 times in your life, and it was incredible. And I remember Deb was quite attracted to the sun and its beauty, and it kind of gave me an idea about some trail names for him, which I then kind of pondered on that night. And let's see, yeah, it started raining, I think, just after we get on with dinner and that sunset, and we had to jump in our tents early that night, and it kind of sprinkled on and off for most of the night, but it was kind of neat, though. It stopped enough, and the wind was blowing enough that by the time we got up in the morning, the tents were actually dry, which is kind of neat. Now, I had planned on, this is a note for myself, there's a Trail of Hope Hostel down in Fayetteville, and that's where I was going to go in and do my resupply, because there was a young man, I was his scoutmaster, and he had since grown up and gone to war in Afghanistan and Iraq, and had gotten married and then had gotten out of the Army, but she was still in the military, and they were living there pretty close by. And I had arranged to take some time and see him, and he was going to help me do my resupply. So that was just a note for me to call. I think Rob, who's going to get a trail named Pogo in a little minute. He was the guy that I was telling you about with the kidney transplant. He went into Waynesboro for his resupply, so that is an option. I went ahead and here at Penmar, I said good. This is Easter morning, and I said goodbye to Deb and to Liz, and offered that to them the trail name Stretch and Sunfire, and they both liked those trail names, and I think they kept them. So got a chance to say goodbye to them, and I'll show you a picture of them here with the Penmar memorial sign. Okay, now that sign is not the border. That's just the Penmar Park. You got to keep going, and as you go, there's some railroad tracks, and you're gonna hit the border, and you're gonna cross the Mason-Dixon line. And let me just show you what that looks like. Okay, so the rest of that day I continued on, and it was a pretty tiring day. Not necessarily that long. It was 10 miles, but I was really beginning to be bothered by what was going on under my choe pads with my skin and the itching and stuff like that, and feeling maybe I thought at the time maybe I was getting a little bit of some detox going on in my body, and kind of out of energy, so I stopped here. I wished I had gone on to either of these two shelters. Okay, nothing necessarily wrong with these. There's two shelters here. They're both small shelters. Water sources nearby. But what happened is another hiker came in, and he offered me half of an orange, which I gladly accepted and ate. And then noticed that he'd been gathering stuff in the woods, foods and berries and plants and stuff. And he had this mushroom that he was messing around with and kind of picking at with his hands. And I kind of asked him if he knew what was going on with that, because I had hiked with somebody who had lost I guess her parents' friends. They all were big mushroom hunters, and they had gotten a hold of the wrong mushroom and ate it, and her parents' friends had died. And I told him that story, and I said, are you sure you know what this mushroom is? And he looked it up on the internet, and I said, oh, I guess I won't eat this tonight. And I said, why? He said, well, it says you'll get pretty sick for about 3 days, but then you'll get better. But then it's too late because all your internal organs have been destroyed and you're going to die. So I thought, oh, that's nice. And here he's been kind of picking that with his thumbs and fingers, and then I kind of watched him do some stuff, and I'm thinking to myself, this guy's he's not really clean. Not very clean. So I started thinking about that orange that I ate. Anyway, so it started. We stayed in the shelter that night, and it, because it was going to rain, and it did. It rained quite heavily. That next day, as we hiked out in the rain. It was really kind of a very it was just a pretty day. It was just a perfect rain. It wasn't raining hard, just kind of a heavy sprinkle. Just kind of kept us cool. It was just so pretty and refreshing. And we came down to Antietam Shelters there. Took a snack, got some water. Now here it says that there's not a lot of water there, and to get your water from the Old Forge Borough Park, which kind of nice. There was a nice water source there, but it just happened to have like 3 different flowing streams coming right in there. It was just an absolutely beautiful place. That would have been a really nice place to stop for the night, and kind of wish I had. And then the Tumble and Run shelters. This is the one that you've seen in people's videos that has a snoring shelter and a non-snoring shelter, and in between them, they've got this beautiful pavilion with picnic tables where you can eat and prepare your meals, and it was really, really kind of a nice shelter. So I kind of wished I had gone into that one for the night, but I didn't. Okay, now my plan was then to come down into Fayetteville, but I started feeling really, really sick. Okay, so I'm hiking now. I'm not feeling well, and I have consumed all my water, thinking that I was dehydrated. And so I got to the point where it's like, okay, I got to do something. I called the hostel, pushed off my reservation for a night, and went over here to the Rocky Mountain shelters. Oh man, would I do this? Would I recommend this? If you have to, yeah, of course. But you know, you can go down to Fayetteville, go into Caledonia, and then go to Quarry Gap if you can do that. You know, that's a great option. But you know, it's not if you're going to go into Fayetteville, because it's a little too much backtracking. I mean, it was a decent shelter. Okay, two of them. They had, you know, the picnic tables were not undercover, but look at this. They were 0.2 east, and then the pipe spring was a 0.5 down. Basically, you had to go all the way down the mountain to the road. That's where the water source was, is just right at the road. So people are driving by looking at this guy just, you know, dipping his water out of a stream, thinking, who is this guy? Where is he? Where, you know, didn't have a backpack on or anything. I wasn't going to drag it that far down. This is where I learned a lesson that I just threw my pack on the shelter floor. If you're going to be gone that long to go down and get water, go ahead and hang it up so the rodents still get into it. I got lucky. I didn't get rodents into it, but the guy that I had spent the night with at the derelict shelters pulled in, saw my error, hung my pack up for me, and then I met him on the way down to get water as I was going back up. That night, my suspicions were confirmed about his hygiene. I watched him open a big packet of tuna fish, one of those big ones that's like 6 ounces, and just put his hand in and scoop out the tuna fish. Didn't wash his hands, didn't put any hand sanitizer on it. Just, you know, dirty hands. Just reached in and was eating the tuna fish that way, and then wiping his hands on his pants. And there wasn't the tenting for this area was halfway back down again towards the spring. So I wasn't going to go all the way back down to camp. So I stayed in the shelter with him. And all that night, all I did is I smelled tuna fish all night long. So I was thinking, if we were going to have a bear visit, this is when it's going to be. And they're going after him, so I'm not going to worry about it. Now, I had tanked up a whole bunch of water when I was down at the stream, and I got my 2 liters filled up, and I carried up a liter in my bag, and I had almost consumed half of that by the time I even left the shelter. But I wasn't worried about it because I was just going to come down here to the road. I dehydrated myself and drank so much water. I drank all the rest of that water by the time I got down here. And it's a left turn to go down to a restaurant, and it's a half a mile. I couldn't do it without getting some water, and I had to pull some water out of a little tiny creek coming down to the road to be able to hydrate myself enough to make it down to the restaurant. I got down there, ordered myself a breakfast, and a really nice diner, by the way. And as soon as I started drinking the orange juice, I had to run to the bathroom and throw it up. I could hardly get down my meal, and asked the guy if he'd take me down to the hostel, which is only a half a mile. He thought I was crazy, but I'm not sure I could walk it that far. And I got down there, checked in, got cleaned up, and I went right to bed. I was shivering, cold, you know, putting down Tylenol, and spent the rest of the day in bed. I pretty much suspect that I got food poisoning. Well, my friend, so I took a 0 that next day to kind of recover from all of that. My friend came and we did my resupply. And then that next day, I decided, well, you know what? I'm going to slack pack. And so Rob, who had now showed up, was there. Pogo is his trail name. And how he got that trail name is he would weave so much as he went down the trail that about every other step is one of his trekking poles that ended up going between his legs. And one of the hikers behind him said, you know, that's like a pogo stick. So that's where he got the trail name Pogo from. And that's as fast as it can happen sometimes on the trail. You get your trail name. And anyway, so he and I, we went up to Shippensburg and to up here. And this is almost at the AT midpoint. And we slack packed back. And the Birch Run shelter here was that was kind of, so okay, so at 8:30 in the morning we met 3 guys who had stayed here that night, and they were already here by 8:30 in the morning. Okay, this is a really easy trail through here. Okay, this is really nice. As a matter of fact, I think I've got a couple of pictures here that I could show you of the trail, and just to kind of show you its beauty. Okay, so as we were coming at this direction, I ran into a couple subscribers. Oh, let's see, Grandma Shorty and Proadalong, and he was a fireman. He's getting ready to retire literally within weeks or shifts, 14 shifts left he had or something like that, and then his wife was going to retire in February, and they were headed down to Springer to start northbound. So they were going to do some vlogging. I haven't seen them yet, but I'm going to keep my eye open for them. Anyway, Proadalong and Grandma Shorty, and got a chance to say hi to them, and then somewhere along here, we took a break, and maybe it meant in this area here, we took a break, and another hiker came by and stopped and said, "Hey, Big Bird, I'm One Step," and iWalks told me to say hi. So iWalks, the lady that brought me back up to the trail, from our house to where we left our car, she brought us up to the Shenandoah National Park there to Skyland, and we started north here on 1 April. And so she said, "Hey, I was out here," and he was out doing some slack packing, and so we met. We said hi, and come to find out he was staying down here at the hostel, and so we met him that next day. There were some hikers that came in that saw and this one gal saw my legs, and she said, "You know, I got a really bad case of chiggers a couple years ago," and she said, "I went septic," and she said, your skin looks like it's maybe going septic." So One Step took me down to the next morning. He took me to the urgent care, and they looked at it and said, "This is not chiggers. This looks like you're having an allergic reaction to something." And I said, "Well, I've got this neoprene. This is probably the neoprene. Have an allergic reaction to it." And they gave me, and he says, "It looks like you are either not. If you're not infected, you're going to be any minute." So he gave me 10 days worth of antibiotics and some steroid cream. And I went back and so I was going to take the day off, put that steroid cream in, keep the neoprene off of it, see how it did. And I actually then took One Step to thank him for taking me to the urgent care. I took him out down south to like where the Antietam shelter was, so he could then hike back north back to the hostel, so he could get another day of hiking in. And that next day, then it was actually I was reacting quite well to the steroid, and so Pogo was suffering from a pretty bad cold that was getting worse, and he did not have a pleasant experience on that southbound slack pack, and he determined he'd better head back home to Michigan. So that was his last day of hiking. And Pogo, if you're ever out there watching this video, I want you to know that was an honor of mine to hike with you that day. And my life has been enriched by meeting you, and I hope you're doing well. So the next day then, this will start leg 23. We went back up to Shippensburg here and started northbound. So, and I left one of my water bottles sitting on the ground. So I started out already with a gear issue, only having 1 liter of water. All right, everybody, thanks. I'll leave you here with a little video clip of this Quarry Gap Shelter. It's really cool, and that's why if you get to stay here, even if you have to come in, do your resupply, and then head out, you don't want to stay the night at the hostel, this is a great place to go stay. I'll put that video in here. Okay, so this is the famous Quarry Gap Shelter. You see this in a lot of people's YouTube videos. Some caretakers have done a really nice job here. Flowers, nice little picnic area, pavilion, nice little brook, I guess if we're going to get water out of here, we're going to have to dip it. It looks clean. Some tent sites. Tent pads, rather. Nice swing. And 4. It's very small sleeping areas, huh? Nice though. If I remember right, Redbeard came into here and it was raining hard.